Yes, Paul McGuinness is from the No Third Runway Coalition and was listening. How are you, Paul?
Very well indeed. Good evening, Eddie. And very interesting last set of conversations. I heard you one with Tom Edwards as well, which I thought was very well observed.
Well, I'm glad that you say that. You know I'm going to annoy you now, though, don't you? Because that's kind of my job, to sort of pick holes in everybody's argument to see if at the end of it, after speaking to you, Tom, and John, we can kind of get an overview of it. Just let's elaborate a little bit on how much, because John didn't think the world changing in the way that it has due to COVID had an implication, not over the kind of 10 or 15 year period that it would require for this thing to happen anyway.
I did hear him say that, and I think that many people today are talking about this, really in terms of the depression in aviation activity and imagining that somehow it's all to do about that. But in fact, there are some sort of more principled reasons that I think are at play here. And, whilst our membership, right across London and the South East has been very disappointed by today's decision, and particularly, by the way, that the people who live in the villages, Harmondsworth, who will be displaced were this expansion ever to go ahead. Despite the disappointment, our sense is that this judgment has really made very little difference indeed. I listened to John's comments. And, it is true that the Airports Commission recommended that Heathrow be expanded. And it is true that Parliament backed it in what's called their Airports National Policy Statement. But the truth is that was 5 and 3 years ago. And regardless of what's happening in aviation today, an enormous amount has changed in that sort of 3 and 5 year period. And a few political and cultural things have happened, which I think are going to make it virtually impossible for Heathrow to expand.
I wonder, because there's a lot of bluster. You will know that we're hosting a climate change conference. You will know that Boris Johnson was on it talking about the imperatives of this country, and you know that his other half is a passionate, very keen environmentalist. But no matter how we do it, I just get the feeling it is the sort of thing that is being talked about. And if the numbers are there, the aviation industry will argue against people like you and say, we need, and we have this opportunity to put Heathrow, London, England, UK back on the map at a time when, as a sovereign nation, we don't have the EU to lean upon.
Well, I think the problem for that argument is there are larger forces at play here, and they already have come into the theatre of action. And I'm going to mention 2 in particular. The first is carbon, because since Parliament approved Heathrow expansion, the Climate Change Act has been amended to incorporate a net zero target. We have now accepted that we have to live within a carbon budget. There's only so much we can use. And the government's climate advisor, who tells them how to implement that budget, has said only this month, only last week, that there can be no net increase in our aviation capacity. And what they've also stated is that if Heathrow were to expand, it would necessarily mean restrictions in the less advantaged regions. And I think that today's sort of levelling up agenda, which only isn't, it's not just the clarion call of this government, everyone has subscribed to it, means that they're unlikely to allow Heathrow to expand because it would mean restrictions in the regions and quite possibly even the closure of some regional airports.
We'll see, Paul. I mean, I don't know if you're talking internationally about everybody signing up to it. I noticed that Australia weren't at that conference, and they've been suffering some awful bushfires over there. Paul McGuinness, talking about Heathrow, no third runway.